Hello and welcome to the third edition of the Not a Pipe podcast. Today we're going to continue what we were doing in the last couple of episodes, where I'm talking about the use of the natural environment to promote human health and well-being. In the last episode I talked about some of the common interventions that you get in nature, from wilderness therapy to horticulture to use of animals and things like hippotherapy, wonderfully named hippotherapy, which is the use of horses for therapeutic purposes. Make of that what you will. And today, to continue such a theme, I think I'm going to talk about some of the theoretical bases for the use of natural environment to promote human health and well-being. So moving on from the practical applications of it to some of the common theories that are used in this type of, well, we could call it public health intervention really, or yes, this type of environmental human health service sector. So there are probably numerous competing theories in this area, but I thought for the purposes of keeping this short, I'd stick to some of the more popular ones. So this is not an exhaustive list by any means. It will give you an overview of about the first, maybe top 4 or so that are currently used or that I know of. Again, my knowledge has limits, but we'll leave it at that. So what am I going to look at? So we will go over stress recovery theory. I think I will also go into Biophilia Hypothesis, attention restoration theory. I might talk about therapeutic landscapes as well, and maybe the idea of salutogenics. Salutogenics is just a way to frame health really, more than a theory in itself. Okay, so let's start with what's known as SRT. Quite often people can't be bothered to say out the whole theory, in the same way that attention restoration theory is also called ART or ART. Let's start with SRT, stress recovery theory. This is one that was really pioneered by a man called Ulrich, whose name was Roger, if I remember rightly. He wrote a couple of papers in 1981 and 83. It's quite famous. You may have heard of it in other guises. He followed a set of patients who'd undergone gallbladder surgery who were in hospitals. One had a view of trees from the hospital bed, and the others had a view of a brick wall. He discovered that the patients with a view of trees recovered from surgery faster, and basically the idea being, is there some kind of way to overcome your stress via viewing or participating in nature? And again, you may have called on the first podcast, what nature means is very variable, but you can see it, you can be in it, you can use it, virtual or physical. It has a variety of different forms, and we talked about Levi-Kohl's ideas of a hierarchy of nature going from 0 to 4 on a scale of levels, from abstract hypothetical to virtual and all the physical manifestations in between. Okay, so similar effects to this have been discovered by a man called Moore in 1981, who looked about viewing natural environments from prison cells, and how that affected the prisoners. And equally, there's people who looked about this and your kind of attention and stress recovery through work. So there's a man called, the paper by Leather et al. From 1998, who looked at it in office workers. If you've got a decent view from your office window, your ability to customize your office and see nature, does it affect your stress recovery? Okay, so from this and in another paper from 1984, Ulrich, spelled U-L-R-I-C-H, basically showed that natural environments had some form of stress reduction that could facilitate recovery. He argued from an evolutionary standpoint, i.e. from a biological perspective, how we've evolved, that this may this is not really a cognitive thing. It might be kind of hardwired. We have evolved in these types of environments for hundreds of thousands of years. Is it not quite obvious that we would have some kind of stress recovery mechanism? It's our almost default. It's our modus operandi to be in these kind of natural environments rather than an office block or in a prison or in a schoolroom for that effect. So others, such as Kaplan and Kaplan, in a paper in 1989, also said this could be partly evolutionary, part of other psychological factors to play a role. It's moved into lots of different disciplines, its theory. So one of the things it's moving to is landscape planning, for example, like how you build urban areas to include green space, roadside planning. There's a paper by Parsons et al. In 1998 about this, to reduce driving stress. So it's the idea that Ulrich situated the natural environment as a place to think about therapy, really, and particularly stress, which is why the series is called stress recovery theory. Yes, okay, that's really it. So it's got an economic dimension as well, because we talked about building into roads, office blocks, and things. So you're reducing sick days and other things like that. So the part of the raison d'etre is to help reduce stress and recovery, so people do more work and there's less detrimental effect on the economy of people being sick. Yeah, that's it really. That's it in a crux. So I think I may have talked about Biophilia Hypothesis before. This is something building on the kind of evolutionary biology idea that we're predisposed to natural environments, and it's called the Biophilia Hypothesis, as in love from nature, from the Greek. And this is attributed to a work by Kellert and Wilson from, I think, '86 was the original collected works about the Biophilia Hypothesis. I think the Kellert book was '95. Basically saying that humans have an innate emotional affinity for for natural environments. Humans have an innate affinity for natural environments. That's what I'm trying to say, and that should be the basis for how we think about some of our kind of recovery theories, just as it plays itself out in stress SRT. So we have this kind of innate tendency that's built into us, and we can come up with ideas. So when we talked about the planning of the urban environment a second ago for reduction of stress, this led to kind of other theories that are known as Urbanism, to reintroduce kind of natural environments into human-built spaces, drawing on this evolutionary mechanism. Yes, so you can get Biophilic Design, for example, is another term that's building. There's loads of wonderful kind of pictures of how you can have buildings, with greenery falling down from them. You may have seen this before, building in rooftop gardens, building in green spaces into flyovers and polluted areas to depollute it. And there's all kind of works that are built on to kind of really use biophilia as a hypothesis to build in other theories. It's almost like working at a meta level, really. Okay, I don't know what else really more that we need to say about that, other than it's been used in a variety of areas. Yeah, okay, keep it shorter and sweeter. Next one, another acronym, ART, as I said, which stands for Attention Restoration Theory. You've already heard about Kaplan and Kaplan, who are a academic duo, who building on these two theories really came up with the idea that nature has a restorative property, not to do with stress but with your attention. What can we say about this? It's part related to education. You can see this builds in naturally into how you not just plan classroom spaces, but how you deliver educational interventions. Maybe children should be going out for a certain amount of time a week into natural environments instead of just play. It can be play outdoors, unstructured. This might allow them to have more attention when they get back into the classroom. Some arguments to be made that basically, especially with children with special educational needs, this allows you to burn off some steam, nothing else. But more than that, they were saying that the nature has a kind of latent capacity to help your attention as a student and as a human, really. Again, they argued this is part of an evolutionary mechanism. So this is really related to something called soft fascination. I think really where nature is seen as something that's stimulating but not overwhelming for the mind. So you get this kind of restoration of your attention in that form, i.e., when you're in a busy urban environment full of cars and honking and noise and all kind of sensory experiences, it can be a bit overpowering. But quite often, unless you're in a hurricane, nature will have this smoother, slower rhythm when you put yourself into it that it stimulates your mind at a base level, but it's not overwhelm it like if you're in the center of London or New York or Paris might do. This is how your attention is restored. It's almost that nature has this restorative property that human urban built environments don't. So when you go into it, it's like a breathing space for your brain, which allows you then, when you need to go and do some activity, typically work or study, you can have better levels of attention when you come back to it. I mean, there are some systematic reviews on this. I do believe Dr. Ruth Garside in 2014 did a review into ART to see if there's any kind of effects generated into it. One of my colleagues, Rebecca Jenkin, I think her name's now changed to Sutter, if I remember rightly, did another review into it that suggested that it's actually nature is not necessarily restorative, it's just that urban environments are detrimental to your ability to have retain attention. Yes, so you can, others that say, let's pick up some more studies. There's one by, oh gosh, Chimprych, I probably said that wrong. We looked at it in a VR, virtual environment standpoint. Yeah, so that's it really. It's about attentional capacity in adult students, whatever, and using the latent effect of nature to help increase your your ability to focus on what you're doing in tasks in a directed way. Okay, moving on to something else. Therapeutic landscapes. This is another theory, again, kind of building on what we've already talked about, the idea that nature as itself provides a set of therapeutic possibilities through its landscapes that it offers. This is a theory that's posed by a man called Gessler, and yeah, so again, it's tied into stress reduction in humans typically, and this has got a really nice long historical tangent to it, as well as not just being evolutionary. If you think about therapeutic landscapes, that ties into all kinds of domains, from springs, the therapeutic healing waters, Roman bath culture, Turkic bath culture. All these places were sites of healing as much as healing and as much as kind of health, really. They kind of had this nice intersection between the two. Right from the Roman period, if you look at England, you've got like the Roman baths in a town that's called Bath, naturally, if you've never been there, or there's sites in Belgium in a place called Geel, normally associated with shrines, and people go there because the water has therapeutic healing mineral capacity. So you can bring it up to maybe to the Victorian era as well. Victorians had this kind of open air medical culture about tuberculosis hospitals being outdoors and how you should be invigorated in the natural environment, which is partly a facet of their romanticized ideas of nature, which is slightly bled into the new era. But if you do look at Victorian era 18th century buildings, they always had the the hospitals and sanatoriums had gardens. All the kind of mental health spaces had gardens because you were meant to be doing outdoor work. So there's this lovely historical trajectory through it that Gessler points to and draws upon about his theory that landscapes have been and can be therapeutic in their use. Again, I think the main paper is from 1992. Yeah, how did I miss that? Lourdes is another site, these religious site, but yet also healing related. Anyway, lots of people have written about this. It's not just Gessler, but he was I believe the person that came up with it. So you can tie this into, landscapes can be for walking, they can be blue or green, they can be nature, they can be landscapes that are based in the sea, estuaries, etc., or they can be on land, is what I mean. You can look at this from any kind of perspective. They can be therapeutic landscapes from a gerontological perspective, looking at how people healed from their older. They can be something, shrines are particularly used for children with rickets or whatever it might be. It's this beautiful, large perspectives of these ideas, can be tied into all kinds of cultures. So this is a nice big meta theory to encompass how nature has been used from a healing perspective quite historically, rather than looking at it from a evolutionary biologist standpoint, which is what the other theories really talk about. Okay, I think last and probably not least, I'll talk about salutogenics. Salutogenics, less than a theory, is kind of a standpoint. So salutogenics is an idea to think about medicine as being not pathogenic, i.e. that we're focusing on the circumstances that contribute to a person's health as opposed to their illness. So we're not trying to cure pathogens, we're trying to promote health. So it's really epistemological in the way that you just look at it. I think it's just an interesting way to contextualize. It's not really a theory, it's more of a standpoint. It was developed by a Russian man called Aaron Antonovsky in 1979 as an alternative way to move away from a focus on illness and symptoms, really, to a kind of a promotion-based idea of health. It ties in nicely to public health and well-being, things like that. So from this perspective, you can look more about social context. It's more about people, I suppose, rather than actual symptoms and the biological mechanisms for illness. You can link it to psychology as well, really, because you're in that kind of personal or collective sphere of analysis rather than the kind of subhuman level of analyzing cells and DNA and biomarkers and such things. That's about it. I think that's one of the more broader conceptualizations of health. It has, got into some government and regional policy stuff. It's been picked up, so you might see salutogenics bantered around as an idea. There's a systematic review about it by Erickson and Lindstrom from 2006. So yeah, it's quite a good theory for explaining perceived health and mental health conditions from a different perspective, the more kind of illness-focused based narrative. That's it, really. Quarter of an hour. Those are, I'd say, the four main key theories that feed into a understanding of how nature is used to promote health and well-being from a human perspective. I might leave it there until the next podcast. This is probably really all I'm going to talk about for like a 3-series part for environment and human health for the podcast itself. And yeah, that's it. I'll wrap it up now, and I hope this has been informative and that you guys have a lovely day.